Trekosophy, the Star Trek Philosophy Podcast. This is episode number 15, and it really should have been 13 because it's 10, 11, 12. So, it is 10, 11, 12. So joining us today, we have number 13, Chris McGee, our tourism advisor for our vacation to SETI Alpha 5.
Good evening.
And our cruise ship director, who's handling the Botany Bay for us, Brendan Kirby, number 14.
YOLO.
And this is, of course, episode 15. And I am Bill Allen, a.k.a. the guy in the red shirt. And tonight's topic...
And Kirk.
And Kirk. Their relationship. It's who's the whale, who's Ahab. Is Khan right? Is Kirk right? I mean, it's one of the great epic stories in the Star Trek universe. So first, I guess we should talk about the episode Space Seed.
Sure. Before we get into that, I'm going to take it upon myself to be the great delegator and say that we've chosen a new Supreme Overlord, a Q, an Admiral, a Praetor, a Chancellor. Mr. McGee, I don't know if people out there have noticed this, but in previous episodes, he's done well in keeping our heads on straight, but we think if we just
doubt that
elevated him to an authoritative position, we would have more management for the show. So, Chris, you're now the moderator, whether you like it or not, with or without your consent. You're now the leader.
Half consent, maybe. What was that phrase that says that great men have responsibility thrust upon them or something like that?
Exactly.
Some seek greatness and others have it thrust upon them.
Chris, you're Caesar.
Oh, okay. Et tu?
Et tu, Brute. You know, we'll do a whole episode based on Rome coming back in the 21st century. We're going to bring about that Star Trek parallel.
Toga, 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 toga. Anyway, Khan, Space Seed.
Good show. Moving on. No, okay.
The basic plot was the Starship Enterprise cruising through the galaxy on its original 5-year mission, finds this old abandoned spacecraft. It's not abandoned, it's got a bunch of people in suspended animation, and it turns out they are genetically engineered super soldiers from the year 1990 something or other, the distant past, the show's distant future, the real world's distant future at the time the show was made, the show's distant past, where these genetically engineered supermen rose up and took over the world, eventually got overthrown, and were shipped off into deep space, never to be seen from again, until they get thawed out.
Right.
And it's an interesting episode to talk about, just to compare it to the movie, because when you first meet Khan, he's a gentleman. He's very civilized and calm and collected, and he says, you know, you've accomplished wonderful things in all the time that we've been gone. And I understand that you see us as the villains of that time period, but you've got to really understand that time period. There's war everywhere. It was a crazy time. We were designed to be suited for the task of leadership, and we did it in order to try to create some kind of lasting peace and end the war under our rule.
Right.
And, I mean, just thinking about it, that makes sense. I mean, all of us deep down think dictatorship would be the best form of government if we were the dictator in charge of everything.
If I ruled the world, I would do this and this and this.
Exactly. We all, if I was president, I'd do it this way. We all believe that we have the potential to be a benevolent dictator and do it right. We all have that little bit of Khan in us.
And it brings up another interesting little point, too. None of us really fully trusts our leader. In America, it's our president. We elect them to office, and then 1 year later, we want to get him out of there. And we think that all politicians are corrupt, all politicians are bad. And we think, well, maybe if we engineered a supreme, human being, someone who could actually do it right and do the things they're supposed to do, that maybe that'll just make it all better. Maybe that's what they were going for.
Well, I think in order to be a successful politician, there has to be something superficial about you, something that appeals to a great number of people. And so, by its very nature, it might be a little bit disingenuous.
Our politicians have to be a reflection of us, and since we're all crazy.
That could be. But with Khan being a bit of a gentleman and trying to do things his way, I think it's worth noting that I don't think anybody views themselves as particularly evil. I mean, nobody except for Nietzsche. But in general, we think of ourselves as doing good. I mean, even tyrants would say that they're just trying to bring about some higher good. Even when we do an evil action in our own lives, people are attracted to the good in an action, even tyrants. I don't think any tyrant would be compelled by the evil of what they're doing. They're compelled by the good in it. And we in our own lives, whenever we do something sinful or something against our conscience, we're not doing it because of the evil, we're doing it because there's some good in the action.
Or we'll justify it.
We'll justify it based on whatever goodness there is there. Even if it's a moment of pleasure and a month of pain, we're attracted to the pleasure. We're attracted to the good thing. And with Khan, sure, he wouldn't have viewed himself as a wicked tyrant. He would have seen, look, I want to put an end to the wars. I want to put an end to all these conflicting dictatorships. I can't remember the phraseology that he used in Space Seed, the episode. But
he said, we offered the world order.
We offered the world order. There's no longer this sort of conflict. And he's attracted to this goodness in it, even though he's a tyrant. So I don't think that's at odds with him being a gentleman. I could see most tyrants being wonderful gentlemen and having a lot of fun with them at a party, but that doesn't redeem them in any way.
Mostly it's because of that justification they have to do. I mean, they, murder is bad, but some people just need killing. And then it just becomes a question of who and why. And when you elevate yourself as a tyrant, as a supreme ruler or everything, you are automatically, since you're the one with the power, you're the one with the money, you're the important one. Other people are less important. And in the case of someone who was genetically engineered to be better, faster, stronger, smarter, everyone is less than human now. If he sees himself as the person that matters and other people like him are the ones who matters, then these lesser species, we're nothing but pets to him, or possibly cattle, depending on what he wants to do with us.
Right. That's an interesting analogy, yeah. Well, let me put this forward for your reflection, and hopefully, if I'm very lucky, your rejection. And it's that phrase at the end of the show, which I think so very much captivated us, where Khan likened himself to Satan in Paradise Lost. You said, Bill, Khan initially comes across as, I can't remember how you said it, a gentleman or something civilized.
Yeah.
Well, if you read Paradise Lost, a wonderful book, epic poem, Satan comes across as sympathetic, a gentleman, someone civilized, the same way Khan does. And he, in giving his speech, is actually rhetorically eloquent, whereas Yahweh is not eloquent at all. There's nothing poetic about his words. There's nothing attractive, nothing appealing about them. In Satan's plight is somewhat similar to Khan, whereas you're sympathetic to him. The situation was he had done all these works. If you're familiar with Christian theology, he does all these works for God, and all of a sudden the son comes home and is placed over him. So, somebody's working hard at doing chores for this family. He's been given room and board, and he's working very hard for them. And then the son of the family comes home, and he's given preferential treatment over the person who's been working hard for the family. And he's understandably upset, and Satan is understandably upset about having somebody placed over him simply because he's the son. And so he rebels. He goes from something divine, but then devolves into a military commander, and then to a politician, and then to a snake, then to something, or he devolves from a politician to something creepy peering in on two lovers, and then finally to a snake looking to devour them. And Khan undergoes the same transformation. He starts off as something superhuman, and then because he can't accept that his superior, Kirk, has been placed in command over him, there was some jealousy in the early dialogue of the show, he devolves back into that military commander role, trying to awaken his troops. And then he becomes this exiled prisoner, and then his rage has consumed him so much to the point of death. There's the same process of devolution where go ahead.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves as far as the rage evolution. We'll get to that when we get to the movie. But I mean, in that first episode, it was like you said, he had devolved to military commander. He was going to take the ship and conquer Earth and rule it the way it was meant to be ruled.
Well, the devolution, it was to the extent of he became an exile.
Yes.
He had the opportunity to explore 23rd century wonders. In this, I mean, what a marvelous opportunity for any of us that was handed to him, but he couldn't do that because of his pride. And so he wound up in exile on a really miserable planet.
Well, it was originally a nice planet. That was part of what made it interesting, because I remember that was the final bit. After Kirk and company managed to stop the mutiny, stop Khan from taking the ship, they gave him a choice. They said, "Look, you're no longer our guest. You're now our prisoner. We can take you back to the Federation, and you can spend the rest of your life in prison in relative comfort. All your needs will be met, but you're never going to have any kind of power. You're never going to even be given an opportunity to do anything at all. Or here's this nice little M-class planet. It's pretty. It's got life, but it's going to be hard work to make something of it, and you'll never have contact with the rest of the Federation." And that was when Khan said that line from Milton: "It's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven."
Right.
And I mean, at the time, that particular planet wasn't all that hellish.
I might be remembering the episode incorrectly. I just remember the notion that they'd be roughing it. Now, it wasn't hellish in what you saw in the movies.
Right.
It wasn't this barren desert. They were just going to have to
live in the woods,
really rough it for a while. And I wish I recalled the episode better, actually.
Yeah, it was like log cabins and hand tools was the best they could manage. There was plants on the planet. There was lots of livestock and animals. It was a habitable world that was comfortably habitable.
Right.
It just had none of the creature comforts of civilization. You're dropped off in the woods. Here's a knife. Have fun.
But he was deprived. I mean, the point is, he was deprived of some happiness purely on the basis of his pride.
Yes.
His pride brought about the misery. His pride forced the misery on himself. And I think that's the parallel with Paradise Lost. Feel free to tell me I'm full of it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it was his pride, his belief that it was a question of, I guess, he was smarter. He should be in charge because he's the smartest person in the room.
Right.
And the fact that the stupid Federation people were able to overcome him shows that experience can sometimes trump raw intelligence because they were familiar with the technology and they knew what was going on around them, whereas he was smart enough to overcome his fish out of water, but not quite overcome it enough to where he had the home field advantage,
Right.
and it ended up costing him in the end, and he got sent off to SETI Alpha 5.
Right. No, I think that's the right analysis.
So is there anything else on Space Seed? I mean, I know everybody wants to go to the movie because the movie was the movie.
Well, let me ask you this: was it ever discussed? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the episode. Was it ever discussed how Khan fell from power? How he and his compatriots were frozen and all that?
They didn't go into a lot of detail on it.
I mean, I know there were books written about the eugenics wars that probably did go into that, but I haven't read those.
Those
Right.
books were kind of tricky because they were written after 1990, and they're good reads because it shows how the stuff going on now is actually because these super soldiers, these genetically engineered supermen, are among us, and they're the power behind the throne. So all of your conspiracy theories about shadow governments and who's really running the UN and the Illuminati, it's all Khan and his ilk. So history, as it's unfolding now, is them in the background, and the whole eugenics wars took place in the background where nobody saw it. But in the original series, because it was filmed in 1960, that episode was 67, wasn't it?
It was first season.
66 or 7, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
and
would give 67.
it said by the 1990s there was World War III, which was a nuclear war. And in the aftermath of that war, everybody's struggling for power, or maybe that was how it ended. But these genetically engineered super people ended up taking over after World War III or during World War III. And eventually, the regular humans got tired of being second-class citizen and I guess won by, just sheer force of numbers. A million tribesmen armed with spears and one guy armed with a high-powered rifle. The guy with the rifle is going to lose even though he's got the technological advantage.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just there are just so many humans, several billion humans, and a few hundred genetically engineered super people.
Okie dokie. I was just
Not
curious.
much of a numerical advantage.
I think there's something we're saying about eugenics in general. And G.K. Chesterton, I feel a bit ambushed because he has such a perfect quote about this in his work Heretics, but I don't have it with me, so I'm going to have to just paraphrase it. So it'll lose a lot of the force. But he said, eugenics is doomed to fail from the start. It begins with the arrogance of some elite scientists saying, I can actually generate a better society than the one we have, because my wisdom is superior to the wisdom of the common man. I can actually decide some of the more important things. And one of those things is mating and child rearing. I can come up with a better idea. And so they select the mates for these people. And Chesterton's point is you have to do much better than just improve the genes and the genetic makeup of an individual. And I think that might have been one of the points of the episode. I'm not sure, but I think it's something that was in somebody's mind at some point. Because if you actually do make a stronger human, stronger mentally and stronger physically, but not stronger in other respects, and then all of a sudden you come along and say, oh, by the way, this is who you have to make love to. The first thing they're going to do is kill the scientist who's telling them who they can and can't make love to. They're going to overthrow that system and take power for themselves. And so, by its own nature, eugenics can't possibly work. It's going to shoot itself in the foot. You have to do something beyond just cultivating strength and mental abilities. You also have to cultivate the spirit. Mm-hmm. That might have been one of the points of the episode. I'm not sure.
It could have been. I mean, it was the plucky humans overcoming another superior foe.
Well, superior ability breeds superior ambition, the elevated sense of pride,
Yes.
the disfigured soul, because it's so prideful, that wretched sin. I don't know. I throw that out there for your contemplation, reflection, and rejection.
I think that's fairly accurate. I mean, of course, I'm one of the regular humans, so I probably would side on the side that says there's a fatal flaw in the superhumans. But
Yeah, that's true. I'll never be a superhuman.
No, I
If
completely
I
agree with you on that. I think it's not enough to breed a being, a human that's better, stronger, uh, more mentally capable, faster, etc. You also have to give him, and I don't think it's possible, but you'd also have to give him a higher sense of ethics, of morality.
exactly, that was Chesterton's criticism of Nietzsche. I think is the same criticism Roddenberry had of the eugenics folks. I don't know that it was he who wrote the episode. I don't think it was, but I, the point was Nietzsche wants to talk about creating the Ubermensch, the Superman, the higher type of being, by developing their mind, by developing their strength. But in doing so, he's undermining our concept of right and wrong. I mean, he's writing a book, Beyond Good and Evil. And he wants to create these giants, these Napoleons, these Caesars. And Chesterton's point was, unless they're good people, what's going to happen to them is the same thing that happened to all of the giants that I just mentioned. They get defeated. The giant and Jack and the Beanstalk. That's what happens to people. Unless we actually like their soul, we kill them. You can create giants, but unless they're actually better people, forget them. And when you talk about a Superman, a higher type of being, you immediately have to ask the question, what constitutes a higher individual? What constitutes, Nietzsche says, man is a thing to be surpassed. But surpassed by what standard? That's the question. In what way was Khan better than us? He wasn't better than us spiritually.
Exactly.
And Nietzsche was trying to undermine the concept that spirituality matters. Well, historically it does. Nietzsche wants to say there's no longer a standard, but he still wants to say A is better than B. Well, that implies a standard. And the standard, I think it's worth noting for us, is a spiritual standard, an ethical standard, a moral standard. Some people are stronger souled than others. And in the end, in the very end, that's what was significant.
And it actually also kind of leads a little bit, not to get us off topic, but kind of leads into the Prime Directive in a way, in that if you violated the Prime Directive and gave a more primitive culture higher
Yes.
technology
Right.
without
Right.
without them having matured enough to use that new technology responsibly, they're going to destroy themselves.
Sure. In a way, I think the Nonian Singh appraisal of the situation is actually the fallacy of the Prime Directive. They say, okay, you've approached this level of con where you've accumulated this mental capacity, but they don't really gauge the spiritual capacity. They say, okay, you've got warp drive, so we'll admit you into the Federation, and that's all it takes.
Well, I mean, I think that is kind of a big milestone because given the history of most places, to get warp drive, you need matter and antimatter, and if you can start messing around with antimatter,
Without
it can
blowing
get
yourselves up.
weaponized. Yeah, it's pretty much the kind of thing that if you're still weaponizing all of your new technology, like us humans did back in the day, and still do today, sorry, but by the
Right.
24th century, it's back in the day. But
Yeah,
technology gets weaponized first, pretty much
usually.
everywhere, usually. And if you're going to weaponize antimatter bombs, you're not going to survive. And if you manage to survive and decide not to blow yourself up when you can make antimatter bombs, that kind of does show that spiritual maturity, if you will.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
also is once you've developed a warp drive, you're entering. As Picard had told that group of people in First Contact, that you're entering a larger community, and
Right.
we don't want you to suddenly, wage war on these other people now that you can reach their planets in
Yeah.
1/1,000,000th of the time that it took you before.
I agree, but at the same time, I also see. I understand Godwin's whatever, but I also see Heidegger, and Heisenberg, and two of the greatest intellects of the 20th century, who were in favor of the Nazi Party. And they were great minds. Heidegger was probably the top tier philosopher at that point, and Heisenberg, very possibly the best physicist. And so there was a maturity of mind, but there wasn't the maturity of political values, and that might speak to something spiritual. I'm not sure. I think you can actually achieve warp drive and not be spiritually mature. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be a Khan character. I mean, he mastered the technical schematics of the Enterprise quite quickly, and didn't master any evolved values, to use Picard's thinking on the issue. I think I see that as a very real possibility. Very intelligent, very strong, spiritual idiots, moral idiots.
One last thing about Spacey that I remember the first time I'd seen it, I had already seen Star Trek II, unfortunately. But regardless, when I went back and finally saw Space Seed, it struck me as unusual that whenever we saw Khan sitting in sickbay, he would have maybe one or two lines of conversation. They'd say, "I'm getting tired. Please come back later. I need to rest." It happened like two or three times in the episode. I'm thinking, how much rest do you need, dude? Just keeps on complaining about being tired.
It's a cop-out. You find an excuse that works and you stick to it.
Yeah.
People sort of respect that. Well, I'll have to hit the old dusty trail. Maybe that actually means I had too much to drink and I really shouldn't be at this party anymore. But if I say I'm tired, people are like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Right.
There was one thing I thought maybe isn't worth discussion, but it's worth being alerted to, was how he manipulated Lieutenant MacGyver's, was her name? He underwent this process whereby she had an infatuation with him as a historical figure, a warmonger, somebody very passionate. I think Kirk said he warned her about how passionate men from our time were, and that might be something appealing to a woman. And Khan took that and really put her into uncomfortable positions. If you really want to pursue this historical investigation, this is what you're going to have to give me. He was extremely manipulative, very intelligent, but again, I don't think his soul was in the right place.
Well, yeah, he was manipulative, but I mean, not to denigrate her or anything, but she wanted to be manipulated.
Absolutely.
She was.
And it was established early on that she admires powerful men that are confident, and which most women do, but I guess she takes it to the extreme.
And she was already in love with the time period, same way that so many people are just crazy about pirates, just ignoring all the lice infestations and the scurvy and the rotten teeth. But they're Johnny Depp. We love pirates.
Well, I think you're onto something there. And the Spartans, I think, would go further. You can make a movie glorifying the Spartans. heaven help you if you made a movie glorifying Stalin or Hitler or any of Saddam. Yeah, you can't
Right.
do that. But there's absolutely no indication that they were any worse than the Spartans. I mean, the Spartans were mean, nasty human beings, but you know, we can have some sort of heroic infatuation with them. I'm just saying with Khan, I wasn't implying that there's any sort of assault going on. I'm just saying that there's something disreputable about his character because he engaged in the manipulation.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying. There is something deformed about him in that way.
And it's part of that he doesn't see people as people because they are less than him, and he sees himself as people.
Sure, and I would actually go as far as to say that's a weakness. I mean, why can't you just pick up on its own merits? Why do you have to engage in the manipulation tactics?
And now the next time you're playing fetch with your dog and you do that thing where you pretend to throw the ball but don't throw the ball, now you'll think about, am I being like Khan? Fast forward 25, 30 years. I don't know what the exact gap is between the episode and the film.
15
Yeah, I don't
years,
know if
I
it's
think.
actually.
I
Is it
think
stated?
well, it's not stated, but I mean, when was the second movie made? When did Wrath of Khan come out?
80 something, 82, 83. So it was
82, 83, and then the series ended in 68, was it?
69.
69? Okay, well, you know, you're dealing with 15 years, maybe.
yeah, it's one of the.
13.
Because it was 66 or so, 67 when they put him on the
Right.
planet.
Okay, 66
Well,
to 82 is.
Assuming that we're going with real time here.
I think it's safe to say that it was real time, given just how the actors aged.
Yeah.
At that point,
And usually Star Trek's pretty good about that, too.
Yeah.
So, at some point, that nice little world where they're out roughing it suffers a massive ecological disaster. One of the other planets in the system blew up and sent out shockwaves that disrupted everything in the system, shifted the orbit of the Ceti Alpha 5 where the settlers were living, and all of a sudden they're stuck in this desolate wasteland desert with nothing but nasty little venomous worms.
Don't you just hate it when that happens?
Yeah, you know, it's a Wednesday. What do you expect? That's Wednesday for you. But anyway, since the planet had been quarantined and isolated and kind of left alone and forgotten about, when a survey ship stumbles across it and discovers it, they don't realize it's the same planet because the system looks different since it's missing a few planets now. And they send an away team down to investigate some anomalous life readings. And what do they find? Khan, still alive. So there's Chekhov. Chekhov's no longer on the Enterprise. His career has moved up. He's now the commander on some other ship, and they're investigating this planet, get captured by Khan. And Khan says, what happened to Kirk? And Khan finds out that Kirk is now an admiral, and he's in charge of this big, important, super secret science
Admiral
project.
Kirk.
Yes. And so here's Khan. First, he got outwitted by someone who's dumber than him. Second, his life has gotten progressively worse since then and just hasn't gotten any better. And third, he finds out that the guy who outwitted him, even though he was an idiot in comparison, has gone on to be famous, successful, and powerful, and things have just gotten better and better and better. So you figure, like Brandon was saying, it was his pride that did him in. And he's been sitting here for 15 years stewing over the fact that he got outsmarted by a goober.
In other words, he turned into Captain Ahab.
Yes, in a big way.
Or a Satan. To use my analogy. Paradise Lost.
I think the Satan thing works, although I'm not entirely convinced how evil Satan became, because I think it's all part of the master plan, but that'll divert us. Anyway. I mean, he's full on gone evil. He's now consumed with revenge. It's my life sucks, my life is miserable, because if he hadn't been consumed with revenge, he could have ruled the galaxy, because he's got a Federation starship. He knows what he did wrong last time. If he wants to take over another ship, he can do it. And that's what he did. And he could have gone on to start building his galactic empire, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to beat Kirk.
Right.
It wasn't about being the ruler anymore. It was about finding that one guy who beat him
Mhm.
and getting his undefeated title back.
Well, Khan's second in command there had made that point. Like the victory was theirs. They could have went on,
Exactly.
but Khan insisted, no, we've got to dispose of Kirk before I can have any happiness in this new universe. I've got to get Kirk.
And
And
in a
Kirk knew
way,
exactly which buttons to push too.
oh yeah. In a way, though, it almost makes sense for Khan to want to kill Kirk because it's the ultimate supervillain mistake. Oh yeah, I saw the hero fall off a cliff. There's no way he survived. I don't need to go look for the body or make sure he's dead. I'm just going to go back and pretend I won and not even make sure the guy is really dead. At least Khan wanted to make sure the one guy who beat him was out of the picture.
Right.
So it does almost make sense, even though it is motivated by emotion and he's probably justifying it after the fact. But that's
Even though they never actually meet in the same room.
in that whole movie, they have some great little dialogues over the phone where it's mostly them trying to push each other's buttons.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, we find out a little bit about Kirk's past, and part of what makes Kirk successful is he cheats.
Kobayashi Maru.
Yes. And so that's the thing. He beat Khan by cheating because that's what he's good at. And so, I mean, if it had been a straight up mental battle, Khan would have won because he is smarter. But Kirk is just better at cheating. Khan, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this like shows a good side to Khan and a bad side to Kirk because Kirk plays dirty and Khan plays fair, even though Khan's the evil one. I don't know. That's just.
I do grant you, though, that Khan is smarter than Kirk. I think you've said that thrice. And I'm not sure I can agree with that.
Well, I'm thinking maybe it's technically, yeah, he is smarter than Kirk,
No,
but
that's what I mean.
his lust for revenge just completely overrides any rational, logical thought.
Well, the implication was that his rational, logical thought wasn't in command. It wasn't that powerful to overcome his emotions. Kirk, on the other hand, he actually could make a rational decision if he had to. Whereas Khan, his lust for power, his lust for revenge, his lust for X, Y, and Z overcame his reasoning powers. And so whatever elevated reasoning powers he had, it was diminished by the fact that his emotions overtook him. And so all of a sudden he started to think chaotically, non-rationally, dare say irrationally. And as a result, he made stupid decisions. Kirk, on the other hand, made intelligent decisions. So the fact that Khan can read a book a little bit faster than Kirk, well, that and 75 cents buys you a cup of coffee. Kirk's intellect seemed to me, in the end, in the very end, to be more powerful than Khan's.
Okay, I am going to still disagree with this because.
By all means. You'd disappoint me if you didn't.
Okay. I get what you're saying. His emotions overrode his reactions, but emotions are in the brain too, and Khan's brain is just faster, better, stronger, whatever. So just from a technical aspect, he is smarter. But his problem is Khan thinks in straight lines. Kirk thinks in corners. I think they even mentioned this during the big fight. Khan has control of a ship, and he attacks the Enterprise. But he's not thinking in terms of three-dimensional space combat because he was planet-bound the last time he was in a military force. He thinks on a flat plane,
Right.
which is how the Enterprise was able to sweep under him, get a few shots in themselves, because it's not so much they were thinking better than he is, it's just they thought differently. And part of it was because that's the world they grew up in. It's just familiar to them. So I think it might come down to experience versus intelligence. Kirk is more experienced. Khan is just smarter. Khan, the fact that he did everything he did and Kirk was grasping at straws I mean, Kirk didn't really outthink Khan from the very beginning. Kirk is just really good at finding those straws to grasp.
Sure.
And he found ways, and he even taught Spock how to, because let's face it, it wasn't Kirk that saved them, it was Spock. Because Kirk should have finished off the ship. You've twice now had run-ins with this guy where it's ended badly. He's got half your crew killed. Your ship is badly damaged. Finish Khan off. Don't let him stay alive and try to talk him down into surrendering because you're beaten. You've done that before, and look where it got you. So Kirk's last decision was a bad one, and it would have killed them all if Spock hadn't done his whole sacrifice bit.
Right.
I mean,
that's true.
So it wasn't so much that Kirk ended up being smarter than Khan, because Kirk still made the same mistakes he made. It was just their varied experience. Kirk knows starships. Khan just knows conquest.
There's only one thing I take issue with that. Because emotions are part of this, reptilian part of our brain, Khan's elevated mental capacities also included his elevated emotions. And I don't think that constitutes an elevated intellect. And the reason why is, I have philosophy symposiums all the time. All the time. And every so often someone will show up and they're just an emotional train wreck where you give off a seemingly innocent, nothing to do with anything, talking about epistemology, sort of a thought, and the response is, "You bastard!" And they're just an emotional train wreck. My first thought is, oh, what a great intellect on them, because they're so emotional. I don't think of Khan as a great intellectual because he's an emotional person. I actually think that detracts from his intellect. I actually respect his ideas on things less because he's so corrupt emotionally.
Okay.
Well, here's an interesting question, though.
By all means.
Would you, knowing what Khan has gone through, having been marooned on the planet, and now it's turned into a hellhole, and he's lost his wife, would you say that maybe it's understandable for him to have these revenge thoughts and this desire to kill Kirk?
Well, no, I don't think it is. And it's because it goes back to my very first outing with you all, the Vulcan episode on logic. At no point do I think it's acceptable to treat someone like crap simply on the basis that your emotions have overridden your thoughts, your intellection, your logic.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't go just on emotion, but it's in a lot of ways it is sort of like having your cake and eating it too. If you're going to conquer the galaxy, you got to get rid of the guy who will stop you from conquering the galaxy. And if you already hate that guy, that just is icing on the cake.
Well, that's true, but at the same time, Khan died because of that mentality. His second in command is right. You can get away with it at this point. You've proven your superiority. You can move on with life. And Khan couldn't have that. He had to have the finality. He had to have X, Y, and Z. And as a result, he died. He died because of that lust for vengeance.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't have had that. He should have respected the intellectual judgment of his second in command.
Well, I agree with that. I was just asking whether or not you thought it was justified that he was felt the way he did, that he didn't listen to his second in command.
Absolutely not. you should never allow your emotions or your desire, your appetite
But
to
you haven't gone through what he's gone through.
Well, I've went through what I went through, and I can say in every single instance, when my mind told me to do one thing, but my desires and my appetite told me to do another thing, sometimes they tell me to do the same thing, and that's great. But sometimes they tell me to do different things. And when my mind told me to do one thing, and my desires told me to do another thing, and emotions told me to do another thing, if I listened to anything other than logic and reason, it was a bad result. It's, again, that moment of pleasure, month of despair. And Kant wound up with the month of despair, and unfortunately his despair was death.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, to take it back to Kirk, that's kind of his thing. It's like when he's faced with two choices, one's emotional and one's mental, because of the way Kirk might not think better than Khan. I'm still not convinced of that, but he thinks so differently. There's always that third option, and Kirk's one of those guys that's always been good at finding the third option where he can unify his emotion and his reason.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about.
And Khan lacked that. I think in his case, I wouldn't say so much that his emotion was overriding his reason. It was more like he was deciding his course of action based on his emotion, yes. And then he just applied everything that he had in his reason capacity to what his emotions wanted. It wasn't so much he wasn't thinking clearly, he was just not deciding clearly. He would pick the thing that was the emotional response, and then he would rationally pursue a course to do it. You got to eliminate Kirk. Kirk beat you before. He's still out there. He's in charge of this project. Kirk's going to try to stop him one way or the other. That's Kirk's job. He's the admiral in charge of the Genesis project. He has to stop this thing from getting out of hand.
Right.
So, his emotions decided what Khan was going to do and not his reason. But then he applied his reason to it. He couldn't find that third option that gave him the winning scenario in a lose-lose proposition.
In a way, I want to tie this back into an earlier episode we did, the Ferengi. Who would be a better mathematician, a Ferengi or a Klingon? A Ferengi. They can do finances. They're expert financiers. And they can follow a mathematical equation, and it will baffle a Klingon. We saw that in the House of Quark episode with Deep Space Nine. But their reason is subservient to their desire. They have a desire for profit, for women, for whatever, what's that called? Rubbing the lobes. I don't remember. Umox, yes. Umox, sorry. Terrible mental block there. I should have had that much quicker. But their reason was subservient to their desires. I see Khan as, yes, wonderful, yes, poetic, yes, he's got an excellent chest, but in long hair, he's a bit of a woman, you know?
Yeah.
I have strange thoughts about Khan, but in the end of the day, his reason was subservient to his desire, and it led to his ruin. In the same way, the Ferengi are a joke. You can play comical music in the background of any Ferengi episode, and it works just perfect, because their reasoning, however brilliant they may be, their reason is subservient to their desire, and it's a complete joke. Right. Is that an episode? Do you guys want to go further?
Well, do we have anything else that we want to mention?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, because this Khan Kirk thing. We've hit the core key points really well, and we're going to have to do another episode just about Star Trek 2, because Genesis, Spock's sacrifice, but this is Khan.
Oh goodness, we haven't even touched on that.
But that's because this is Khan versus.
This is about Kirk. Khan and Kirk, yeah.
Yeah. I'm content to do another episode, but my goodness, that has to be
probably the best of the Star Trek movies was Part 2.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could disagree with you there.
It's like even Star Trek 2, which I say is the best of the films, has a little plot hole that gets overlooked quite often. and that's how does Khan recognize Chekhov? Because
Oh
Chekhov
yeah,
wasn't in the crew.
I've
I
heard
wasn't
several
was.
different explanations for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I was going to bring up another, what I thought was a plot hole in Star Trek II, besides the big one that everyone talks about, which is Chekhov. And that is, okay, the Genesis device explodes at the end of the film on Khan's ship. And then all of a sudden, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Genesis device supposed to basically terraform a planet in like, 2 minutes or something? Make it hospitable for humans, no matter what its original ecology was or something. Well,
Yes.
okay, the Genesis device explodes in the middle of the nebula, and all of a sudden now there's a planet out of nowhere. The Genesis planet suddenly appeared. Did the Genesis device
Well,
just manufacture
get
the
that.
planet too?
I don't get
yeah,
that.
out of the nebula. I mean, what's a nebula? It's gas, it's dust, it's
It works.
star stuff. I
That's
mean,
all you need, Chris.
it
Let's
blew
step
up.
it up. Let's use your imagination, idiot.
It
I was
blew
trying to
up
figure
and
out where
was
did this planet come from. Holy cow,
It
that
came-
Genesis device is really powerful.
well, it
To
came
create a
from. I mean,
planet.
a stellar nebula is eventually going to make planets anyway. It just takes it several billion years for all the stuff to coalesce.
Is that what a casual viewer to Star Trek II is going to assume?
No, at that time, I think the casual viewer in Star Trek II is going to be like, "Oh man, Spock is dead."
Yeah, well, that's right.
Oh,
That's true.
that's because that's what gets people. It's like, "Oh, Scotty, you did it! You're great! We're out of here!" Whoosh, and it's like, "Wait, where's Spock?"
Mhm.
Just one last question, because I do have to rejoin my friends at some
Yes.
point. I did tell them 10, it's now 10:09. Was there anything else movie in philosophy related?
Star
Because
Trek
I do-
movie and philosophy related?
Well, or even Space Seed.
Oh,
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much the two key ones. I mean, we didn't talk enough about the whole Ahab thing, but I mean, that was it. It was
Yeah, well, that's it.
it was Ahab and the White Whale. It was Milton's Paradise Lost. It was
Well,
that's
it almost goes without saying, really.
Maybe
Yeah.
that can be Star Trek First Contact. Because we have to do a Borg episode, but we also have to do a First Contact episode.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Well, thanks for listening to another exciting episode of Trekosophy. Be sure to check out our website, trekosophy.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and iTunes. Please leave us a review. We're trying to find out what you guys want to hear and what you guys like and don't like, because we're going to get this right. This is about the fans. We can also be emailed at trekosophy@gmail.com. We are definitely interested in listener questions, ideas for shows, people who might want to get involved. Join us next week, and thank you for listening. And special thanks to Chris and Brandon for great insights on the man, the myth, the legend that is Khan. Thank you, and good night.
We'll say it's 15, recorded October 11th. Oh, it's 10, 11, 12. Maybe we should make a reference to that.
10, 11, 12. What a wonderful day.
So you get extra bonus points if you check in on Foursquare today.
Oh, and it's 9 o'clock. It's 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, boy, it's 9 at 10, 11, 12.
42 inches. That's not bad. This isn't being recorded, is it?
Maybe.
Oh. Benny Hill Banking.
What?
Benny Hill Banking.
Benny Hill.
The saxophone music, wacky British comedian. That's the Ferengi. They're brilliant at what they do, but they're silly.
I live an isolated life.
Sorry.
Evidently.
It's very isolated, very pathetic, very sad. You'd say a prayer for me right now if you knew what sort of life I live.
And you should read Oatmeal's recent comic on how much cats actually kill.
Oh, cats are nasty.
Oh, they're horrible creatures. Yes.
They're con. They would manipulate.
That's what they do. They're all cute and fluffy when they're, first thawed out, but once they're warmed up, oh, the claws come out. When I was traveling the world, I found that out. Everybody hates America but loves Americans. It's an odd thing, because you'll be sitting in a bar somewhere and it's like, damn Americans screwing up the whole world. Not you. You're cool. It's everybody.
I don't have a dog.
Well, you gotta get a dog.
I'm not an animal rights person. I eat cows. How could I have a dog and eat a cow? I didn't get that.
I have a dog and I eat cows and sheep and pigs and goats and all sorts of things.
One thing that I thought would be prudent is if we all were to show up with 2 questions each, or 2 statements. It wouldn't even have to be a question. And the group could discuss that based on the time. That way it kept everything flowing.
Oh, we'd have to actually do some homework?
The McGee's rule of Star Trek. It's what he posted on Facebook. If you talk about the lack of something in Star Trek, you're no longer going to talk about Star Trek.
We just did.
Oh, it's like you're famous now. You're going to be as big as Godwin is. I mean, Godwin has his law, and McGee has the a Star Trek corollary that's going to be someday, 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be all over the internet, and you're going to look at people and be like, oh yeah, McGee's rule of Star Trek lack. Yeah, that was me. I'm that McGee. And they'd be like, no, you're not. You're just saying it because your last name. No, it was me.
Am I the only one that thinks that girl in the episode, I can't even remember her name, but she was the hottest girl on the original series?
Yeah, you're the only one.
I mean, the last time I had conversations like this, I was drunk in a bar and it was 5 minutes till closing. So I don't remember having the conversations, but we had that late night barroom chatter. You get the deep philosophical thoughts mixed with pondering the nature of the drunk chick in the corner's panties. I don't know.
It is what it is, but you know what? It's 10. We could do another 10 minutes on Khan's chest. Let's do that right now.
It was the first Star Trek movie I ever saw. I could spend 2 hours and tell you the entire script almost word for word. Almost. I mean, I get some of the intonations right at least. This is SETI Alpha 5!
I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. Well, it's not even a holiday, but it's my favorite something rather.
Yeah, it's a holiday. It ought to be a national holiday, and once I rule the world, it will be. I found out Patrick Stewart is Jewish.
Oh, really?
Huh.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt it.
No, that's fine.
It just happened just now.
He just turned Jewish?
Wow.
The movie,
All right.
I don't have anything to say about the movie. I'm out of ideas.
It's impossible to get the engine started in under 60 minutes. Well, you got 5. Okay, they're on. We can go now.
I'll do my best to make pancakes more interesting in the future.
All right, we're back. It's always fun. I should probably do more drinking, but I got to work tomorrow, so I can't really. Yeah, well, let me ask our fan if there's anything she'd like to talk about.
Our one fan.
I grow beards like a 3-year-old can grow a beard. It's not pretty. Smooth as an android's bottom.
I'll tell you, there were a lot of them that it's like I go back and watch, and they do that soft lighting technique. Yeah. Have that angelic glow,
Oh, yeah.
That we're going to zoom in, and they've got light crossing their face, and it glows, and it's the soft filter and all that. And I'm like, yeah,
Really?
you're wasting your special effects.
I'll sing you the Klingon drinking song. I'll say Jolan True. I'll recap Romulan philosophy, Klingon mythology. Not seen one animated episode.
Remember that time when you were really drunk and you said that Spock would look great in a toga?
I mean, do we really even need to recap the whole plot? Shouldn't everyone who's listening to this... it's kind of like required watching, isn't it?
Well, sort of. I mean, since the Next Generation, you gotta recap the classic stuff.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. We got a whole bunch of kiddies now, and we gotta educate about the good movies.
Who's up for some con? I could either have